When people learn about me, they get really amazed because I've done so many different and very different things with my life and career. One of the things I'm about community and family. Being raised in traditional culture and community at Six Nations, and being raised with very strong values and principles about what it means to be a good human being. And wherever I've gone, no matter what I've done, that's been my primary focus in putting effort forward and enjoying life, celebrating life, and honoring life as well. As a professor, bringing all of that lived experience into the classroom, students really enjoy my classes, and the comments I hear back from them is they just really appreciate the stories and my experiences that I'm sharing with them. And it's a very unique approach into teaching. Not for me, of course, as an Indigenous person in Indigenous pedagogy, this is how our communities teach, is through story, through lived experience. And that's why elders were revered so much within our cultures, because the belief is the longer you have on this earth, the more wisdom you acquire.
I've always experienced Darren to be insightful, to be grounded, to be respectful, and to also be firm and fierce in lifting up and moving forward from his Indigenous roots to continue to press forward.
He is just a great guy. I feel like there's many things I could say to describe him, but on the outside he seems like a little tough guy, but he's really a teddy bear, and he just wants to share his inspirations and his love for the world, and he wants to try and do what he can to make the world a better place.
I first met Darren when I was starting as an Indigenous Student Support Coordinator in 2010. So I think it was my first month in the job. I had an office in the Bricker Academic Building, just one small office, and he was my first, I would say, off the street visitor. He was a master's student at the time, and I had a knock on my door, and I looked up and I saw Darren, and he just said, "Hi, I'm Darren Thomas, and I'm a master's student here, and I just wanted to meet you. I heard you were hired." And he was so welcoming, so warm. He spent time with me. He told me his story. He listened to mine. And my first impression of Darren was somebody who listens with an open heart and is a wise, experienced person who is thoughtful. He is an engaged thinker. And I loved knowing who he was. And I knew right away that he cared about the work and he was committed to the campus community.
I only really got to know Darren when I was the chair of the committee that hired him as the Associate Vice President, Indigenous Initiatives. When he met with the group, you could see that experience and knowledge that he would bring to bear in the role. But it was really wisdom and integrity that he also added to it. As I met him and I was able to spend time with him, I appreciated much, much more what Darren is as an individual, as a human being, which is so important in the creating of this role.
Darren was early in his PhD program, and so my first interaction with Darren was through some of the community work, outreach work that he was doing then. I was really interested in learning more about his research, inviting him to speak to some of our staff members at the Waterloo Region District School Board, and he's been a great person to kind of bounce some ideas off of over the years.
Darren's been at Laurier as long as I have. His reputation preceded him of being such a strong, community-engaged employee at the university. But since I've known Darren, I would say that he is just such a grounded, authentic individual, and that I love spending time with him. I love learning with him, and I'm really excited about us continuing to develop the relationships that we have in leadership at the university as we build Indigenous initiatives.
Darren has amazing standing in the community. When I have mentioned my excitement about him coming into this role to others in the community over the past couple of months, everyone says how excited they are because of the kind of stature and the kind of reputation he has in the community as being a courageous, wise, thoughtful mentor to so many people. He'll now, instead of teaching students, he'll be teaching everybody about Indigenous thought and philosophy and taking us to a new spot.
He's worked in education before, so I think that's really important to be able to work with different people and students. But I think what's really important is that he knows how to work with a good mind, and that's like a really big thing for us as Haudenosaunee people. Is he uses reason but also passion, and he's very good at balancing those two.
I think one of the greatest things that Darren brings to the role is that he's been a student, he's been a professor, he's worked in community liaison, he's a scholar. That really encompasses everything that we do as a university, and so he will be able to impact all of those corners.
I was really pleased to see the announcement for Darren to take on this role. I think in this position he will be a really excellent role model for many students, not just Indigenous students, but other students as well, to see an Indigenous scholar in this position. So I think that it's going to be a win-win situation for both of our institutions, and Darren is really well suited for that.
I think it's really important because it's a key leadership role, and his extensive knowledge of Six Nations history and his understanding of the relationships that exist, the historical relationships that exist with Six Nations, and I want to say our neighboring communities. And so I think in terms of how important to understand that education is the key to reconciliation. So given his understanding, his background, his research, I think he'll play a definitely key role in that whole process of the reconciliation with the Indigenous communities.
The opportunity I see right now with this new role is to really bring those same skills of teaching through Indigenous thought and philosophy into and across the entire institution. There's so much that we can make contributions as Indigenous people. So when this opportunity came up, I thought that there's so much that we can do to build relations with and between the Indigenous community, mainstream society, and the university, but also the intellectual contributions that can be made in every single discipline that we have at the university. And I think that's where, again, intellectuals, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so all the professors and the various programs and academic units, they get trained in their own specific area of expertise, but if they haven't had any exposure to Indigenous thought and philosophy, how are they going to ever know it, right? And so raising that question, if we're really aiming to indigenize the institution, if we're looking at decolonizing, if we're looking at reconciliation, these are some of the efforts that need to be advanced.
He's aware from multiple different structures and lenses on how the university works and operates. And he sees what works, and he also sees the things that can be improved. So I think that having him come with a rooted perspective as a Six Nations community member will really help drive Indigenous community engagement in a way that we've not done before. I think that he can say hard things that needs to be said, and I think he's somebody who can get buy-in and resources we need to grow.
It'll be nice to highlight Indigenous perspectives, philosophies, and ways of knowing in the institution that can be on the same level as Western philosophies. And I thought that was really refreshing to hear, because when we talk about indigenizing institutions, it's usually just by adding courses or, some checkbox type activities. And I feel like the AVP position really hires the Indigenous people to do the work, which is really important.
3 or 4 months ago, Darren and I were in conversation. We were talking about reconciliation. And he said to me, reconciliation for Canadians is not about Indigenous peoples reconciling with settler peoples, but in fact, instead, that the descendants of settlers are settlers, that really reconciliation is that group becoming reconciled with their own history. And that seems to me to be one amazing example of the kind of thing that Darren does every time you talk to him. He gets you to see things that you didn't see before in a way that makes you feel really happy to have him show you the way, because he's so, he's a friend showing you, and he wants to make sure that you understand what he sees and make you a better person for it.
Having an Indigenous scholar in a senior role, such as the one that Darren's going into, can be significant. Most universities are being very responsive to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and have made commitments to hire more Indigenous, and it has the potential for really great impact, but it's not something that he can do on his own. You know, it has to be a broader institutional commitment. So I'm optimistic, you know, that there will be significant impact, and I know the students in the community will definitely be there to support him.
I think one important piece is that Indigenous perspective to land use and the understanding of what that means to Six Nations. Understanding that the institution is located on the Six Nations territory. So I think that's very important, and he can be the one to communicate the understanding.
I think it means a lot to the community as well, because he's grown up there, and it's just a big step for Laurier, I think, showing that they get someone so unique and who's going to do a really good job.
Well, I think the primary challenge in this new role is there are so many moving pieces, right? Laurier as an institution, not just here, it's every large institution, is a huge machine with many moving parts, staff, faculty, you know, on every level of support and admin across the institution. The goal for indigenization and decolonization, reconciliation, these are huge goals. The TRC released their final report in 2015, and we're still struggling with what reconciliation means as a country. And improving health and well-being is a significant step forward. And this is where, again, where an educational institution like Laurier can step up and train its learners, Indigenous and allied learners alike, how they can contribute to the well-being of Canada, which must focus on the well-being of Indigenous peoples that have been left behind. It's going to take way beyond me as an individual, way beyond our staff team of the Office of Indigenous Initiatives and from our Indigenous faculty. We need support from our allied groups, all the staff and faculty, to pick up the same passion. And it must be intentional. When we're looking at change, we must intentionally change. Once we can critically look at what is the reality we're dealing with, how do we make this change possible? And that's where our strategic vision is going to really come in, because we're going to have to look at, you know, people describe it as low-hanging fruit, but what I'd rather describe it and like to use as quick wins. Where are there some quick wins? And there are a lot of areas where we can make quick wins at Laurier and start really advancing things in a way. And once we start building that momentum, then we'll open more doors quicker.
The role he's going to be shaping will really transcend a lot of what is structured, because of what he means to the community he comes from, the community he embraces, which is all of us. I think it's quite unique. The students are very important here in what Darren will bring into this role. It's very important with our current students, our future students, that they see our commitment to indigeneity and where Laurier would like to be on this very important initiative. They will have in Darren a very strong supporter of what students need, and understanding indigeneity, reconciliation, and community engagement and partnership. It's very critical in what we need to do here. Faculty will see the same, but faculty will have a very strong colleague and collaborator that will allow us to go forward very strongly on that front.
I think that this role is a huge shift in the way that we deliver Indigenous inclusion on our campuses and locations. Darren's role is a faculty position. It has tenure and academic freedom of expression. He can navigate these conversations and really keep Laurier not only accountable, but performing best practices with faculty, staff, and students.
For Laurier, it's a step forward. It's a step forward toward enacting the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, specifically in relationship to education. It's a step forward to actualizing and operationalizing the strategic plan and the indigenization pillars of Laurier. To have structurally instituted an Associate Vice President of Indigenous Initiatives here at Laurier is an anchoring. It's a fulfilling of a commitment in terms of resources, in terms of dollars, in terms of an actual person who has the power, who has the authority to move that forward. And so I think for Laurier, we'll see some real structural changes. Who are we doing this for? It's for our people. It's for the students coming down the path. It's so that we can say to the students that come here, you belong. You're not othered anymore. That there's a place here for you. And so Darren, I have a lot of respect for him. So I'm so thankful and grateful that he's coming here. He chose us. He chose Laurier. And so we're lucky. We're very lucky.
For my dad, he's shown just a lot of resiliency in terms of being an Indigenous person, but also just as a person in education. He's gone through so many different careers, done so many different things, but this role really seems to be basically all that he's wanted to do wrapped up in one title. So I think that's really good, and it just inspires us as his 3 children in post-secondary. I think it just really helps us kind of carve a path of what we want to do as well.
Darren has done so many things to get to where he is today, and I know that it took a long time for him to do his research and his studies. And so, yeah, just a huge congratulations that Darren has accepted this role, because I think that Laurier should be more thankful for Darren's presence than Darren may be for working at Laurier, because I think he's going to bring a lot of expertise and knowledge and perspective that is new and refreshing.
I would say, Darren, we're so glad that you've chosen to stay at Laurier as our new AVP. I'm really glad that you are coming in to be our leader and to do great work. Welcome, and I know you've been here a while as a staff, a student, and a faculty, but it's wonderful to see you in this role leading us.
When we looked at the accountabilities of this role, the knowledge and the experience that was required for the role, which was important and that you had, what was more important was we saw how much you care and how much integrity that you will also bring to this role. And for those reasons, again, Laurier is going to be more than happy to have you here, and we welcome you here for many, many years to come, and much success, Darren.
And to you, Darren, from Six Nations Polytechnic, and the board and the staff and all the students there who know you and love you, we wish you the very best. Oyanre to you, and we know you'll do well. Call us anytime.
Darren, we're so pleased and honored to have you join Wilfrid Laurier University as our AVP Indigenous Initiatives. We've waited a long time for this position and for you to join us, and so excited that day is here now.
First of all, I'd say congratulations. He's had so many successes in the last year. He finished his PhD, and I'd say welcome. I'm so happy that you're here, and I hope that he finds a good home here at Laurier in this role as Associate Vice President of Indigenous Initiatives.
For me and my choice to go to Laurier for my PhD especially my PhD is in community psychology. What community psychologists do is we look at the health and well-being of a community, and so it goes way beyond an individual person's health. And so for me, it was a perfect fit to my community work within Indigenous community, because there's no doubt that Indigenous populations have had significant adverse relations with the Crown because they dictated and limited our human rights for so long. And now that we're trying to understand all of these laws that were in place, and we're trying to improve the quality of life away from this time period, we need intellectuals that can think and understand differently. We have to understand both the Western world, but we also have to understand our Indigenous ways of knowing. We're really poised as a really key leader across other institutions in Ontario and across the country, because we've got the commitment from senior leadership, we've got really strong support amongst allied staff and faculty who really are putting this commitment forward and wanting to advance and improve relations. So it's exciting. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to work for. I'm proud to work for Laurier.